Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Leader in You podcast brought to you by EMC Leaders. We're so excited to be here for yet another incredible show that we have. Welcome back, and I'm here co-hosting this podcast with amazing Dr. Lola Gershfeld.
Hello, Polina. Hello, everyone. Well, Polina, it's so good to have you back at the beginning. I'm so always excited because you bring so much energy and love to this podcast. And everybody is so nice to be here with you. We have a great show today.
Yeah. So, a reminder before we get to today's topic that for any information or support you need in the workplace, or you feel alone, or you feel like you need help, we are here for you. And we don't want you to feel alone. We want you to feel supported, valued, understood, and validated in your experience. So, you can always reach out to us, Lola at emcleaders.com or Polina at emcleaders.com. for information or support that you need at the workplace. Okay, let's get to it. So we're actually going to start off this podcast where we left off 2 weeks ago. So before Valentine's Day, we did a podcast really talking about understanding the basics of the emotional connection process and understanding how simple EMC is, and also how effective it is in our life because we truly need it. It's just like ingrained in our brain to be connected, and how we can take this perspective of the importance of connecting on an emotional level with your coworkers and in the workplace. So we talked about all different kinds of things. We talked about the simplicity of how emotions rule our life. We talked about the importance of being present and how all that can create so much more openness in our heart and so much more love. We also talked about the goals, the attachment lens, the importance of being securely attached in a relationship, the importance of working in this experiential conversations, and how to have these conversations effectively by using the EMC process in the form that, if you haven't heard already, is such a powerful tool to integrate into your connected conversations. And then we also took a look at withdrawers and pursuers. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that today, along with success and vulnerability. What exactly does it mean to be vulnerable, and why there's success in vulnerability as opposed to weakness, which is what we hear so often. So if you didn't catch the first part of this episode, just head over to our YouTube channel, EMC Leaders, and you can find last week's video, which was an interview, fantastic interview in the industry, in the law, I would say law in the law industry we had with a lawyer. And the week before that was part 1 to this episode.
Do you know,
Okay.
do you remember the episode number?
Yeah, 79.
Yeah, 79. Okay, great.
Was it 79? Actually, I could take a quick look. If you go to our YouTube channel, or if you're looking through the podcasts actually on any podcast platform, it is in fact episode 79.
Excellent. All right.
Look at that. All right, let's get to it. So first, Dr. Lola, tell us the difference between, because I could talk all day long. Tell us the difference between a withdrawer and a pursuer. As we did talk about some characteristics that one would see in a withdrawer and one would see in a pursuer, and to identify where you are in your relationships at work. In what relationships are you a withdrawer or pursuer? So let's just take a brief moment to review quickly what are the characteristics or signs of a withdrawer and a pursuer.
All right. Very good topic. Well, both people are behaving into the response of the disconnection. So a withdrawer, a person who naturally goes into withdrawing or avoiding the stressful situation or stressful conversation. It could be a difficult conversation, or they sense a conflict that may be occurring. So they will retreat and they would kind of like shut down because they are afraid to say anything else that will cause the disconnect. So withdrawers naturally shut down their emotions or naturally use these coping mechanisms that create a little more safety for them. Because if they allow emotions to experience, they probably feel they will be overwhelmed, or they will not know how to control those emotions. So in their natural way of dealing with difficult emotions, they shut it down and they withdraw from the conversation. They say things like, I don't want to talk about it, or let's change the topic, or they actually naturally do change the topic to something else. And they avoid by creating more distress in themselves and in the relationship. So that's withdrawers. Pursuers, they sense the disconnection and they sense maybe a sense of rejection or abandonment, or somehow there's a distance in the relationship. And so what they do is they start to feel anxious, and the anxiety comes across as pushing for connection. So they may be asking a lot of questions like, what's going on? Like, what are you feeling? When are you going to get this done?
Are you
Or
okay?
are you okay? Yeah,
Are
are
you
you okay?
okay?
Is something wrong? Did I do something? Right. So there's an anxiety in their sense of the relationship. And that is also, I mean, adaptive coping mechanisms that they use. What they actually trying to do is they trying to get reassurance that they are connected, they are still important, you're still there with them. And many times those messages actually get missed. So the pursuers with the anxiety start to ask so many questions or start to give the message to the withdrawer as if there's something wrong with the withdrawer. They are criticizing the withdrawer, or they are judging the withdrawer for not responding. Where the withdrawer, by distancing and pulling back, gives the message to the pursuer, I'm leaving you. Like whatever you're saying is not important to me. So those mixed messages and missed messages actually fuel the negative cycle, the negative pattern, and actually create more distress in the relationship. So the pursuer becomes more anxious, and as they push for the answers, for the response, the withdrawer becomes even more shut down and withdrawn. So they actually impact each other and they activate each other's responses to these experiences that they have.
That is so well put. And it's true. What I find really interesting is when I recognize the patterns of how I respond in different relationships and different situations as well. Because you can think someone's a pursuer, maybe you feel like you're a pursuer when you've done something that hurt someone else. But you might be a withdrawer when someone does something to hurt you in that same relationship, right? So you could be pursuing if you feel like you've hurt someone in some way, or if they feel withdrawn, or they're withdrawing, and then you could also be the withdrawer. So this is good to identify also how you respond in different situations and different relationships. So you could be either of those in a relationship with your boss or your coworker or someone who works for you.
And also,
So
if you're a trainer, right? If you're
mhm.
in the L&D professional and you train teams, it's good idea to recognize the pattern that the teams are experiencing, or the leader may come to you and say, oh, I cannot work with my team, they're so difficult. Or this person is so difficult, this person is not following through with their tasks, and I just don't know how to re-engage them. So it's good idea to recognize what is the pattern. Is it a withdraw, pursue pattern? It's a pursue pattern, because it gives you then the roadmap on how to create safety in the relationship so both people can re-engage and have a conversation.
That's awesome. Well, so this is great topic that will kind of bridge us to talking about what really does it mean to be vulnerable, and how does that vulnerability bring success in the workplace and in our relationships. And also, I think I'm also curious, and I know probably our listeners are as well, why is vulnerability deemed in such a negative way as a weakness, showing that vulnerability as a sign, that we are somehow weak? So tell us.
Yes, well, I think it's a good question. I think number one, if I'll start from the back, vulnerability is viewed as weakness because our society have not really been welcoming emotions or talking about emotions. People feel like emotions are so private and we don't really understand emotions, and emotions can be dangerous. Well, from my work over the last 15 years, there's really nothing wrong and nothing scary about emotion. And I think we have not had really a clear roadmap on how to work with emotion. We've been told, don't
I
cry.
think, well, I think maybe like if we think back to like the time civilization started, I don't know if emotions were a powerful tool to protect our survival, right? Like if you think about it, it is powerful because we're connected with other people. And so we are not having to be in survival mode. So then we're like in thriving mode, right? But if you think about back then when we were just like learning how to actually survive in this world, our emotions, like there was no understanding of our feelings because it was not protecting us.
But if you think about the social brain and how we are wired, uh, it's actually we can read each other's facial expression very quickly, right? We can
Mhm.
read it in 100 milliseconds, and in another 300 milliseconds, we can actually feel. Well, why is
Mhm.
that? Because we are social bonding mammals. So it gives us this message that there's something wrong. If I see on your face anger, I can feel the anger. So our brains are very in tune to read each other's social cues and emotional cues. What happens, I think, over the years as we became more civilized is we did not know how to work with emotions. And so we always felt like, oh, emotions are those women who become so emotionally charged. Emotionality is a bad thing to have because workplace is professional and we should be professional. Should be focused on tasks and work, and we should leave emotions at the door. All of these sort of things, myths, created hesitation and fear about talking about emotions. But for the last 10, 15 years, I think emotions have been experienced and shown in our brain scans that emotions are very powerful and they actually control the way we respond. So when we talk about vulnerability and success and vulnerability, we actually saying if you have a way to express your emotions, and first of all to be in tune with your emotions and express it in a way that safe and professional, you actually create safety for the other people instead of responding with anger or criticism or avoidant when you withdraw. If
Yeah.
you share your vulnerability, you actually create more empathy. You actually
Mhm.
pull for that empathic response from other people, and it becomes less threatening for them to be there for you, to support you, right? I mean, if you think about it, your own experience, when you hear a leader express fear or uncertainty or concern in a very calm and soft way, you're more likely to support that person and to understand them and say, hey, we can do it together. You're more likely to pull for that reassurance than if you hear a leader saying, no, I don't feel anything, I'm not afraid of anything, and start responding by shaming or lecturing people instead of sharing that vulnerability.
Yeah, so I guess it's like really interesting because we're feeling beings, right? We are not robots. We are humans, and what makes us humans are our emotions, right? So why has it taken so long for us as a society to recognize, and still there's so much resistance against sharing that vulnerability and being open and vulnerable in the workplace environment and in relationships in general. So, like, what is taking so long for people to recognize? Recognize, like, we're literally humans because of our emotions. Like, if we didn't have emotions, we would no longer be humans. We would be robots, right?
Yes. Well, I think it's taking long because they don't know what it looks like. People don't know what it looks like to share vulnerability.
Well,
So I
like,
think there's no role model. I mean, how would you know a beautiful relationship, or how would you know in the workplace it's okay to share vulnerability if you never experienced it?
well, like, if we could think back to some of like the greatest, I was going to say influencers, but not like in a social media way, but just like in the world, like people who have changed, who've been very impactful in the way this world works. They say, they talk a lot about energy and the importance of moving energy, and the energy, this world is created of energy. But what I think is so interesting is like every feeling that we experience, I think in what you're saying, when we create vulnerability, we create that energy that we need, that internal energetic force for us to be motivated, for us to be moving, to grow, to move forward in a direction in the workplace, in our relationships. So it's like when we are open in that vulnerable way, then we create that energy that we need to actually have life. We
Yes.
can create that life, and when we don't have that vulnerability and don't create that life, then we are unable to move forward, and that's where we get stuck. So, like, if you think about it in a very big picture of what life is about and how us humans were really created to feel these emotions and to experience them on a daily basis, movement, the answer to life is movement. The reason why we're here on this planet is because there's so much movement. And if we think about it in that way, we have that movement in everything we do until we get stuck. And
Yes.
then when we get stuck, we don't have movement anymore, wherever that area of life gets stuck. And sometimes it gets stuck becoming progressively worse, which then declines our ability to live life the way we are meant to live it. So if we take a look at it from that perspective, where the vulnerability that we allow to ourselves to experience in these conversations, and we allow someone else to feel safe enough to experience in the conversations with us, actually creates more movement in life, in our life, because we are not stuck anymore, and we have that capacity to increase the energy and build those relationships where we are creating more movement forward.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting to add into in the EMC process. And if you look at this process in a way where there are different stages, so we have stage one versus stage two. Stage one is where you can have this access, being able to access your vulnerable feelings, your emotions, understanding the cycle, what emotions are linked to the cycle and how the patterns show up. And that really brings in the importance of vulnerability, because once you are open to the vulnerability and see the success in vulnerability in stage one, then you can really move forward. Move being the very primary word in this, move forward into stage two, which is the healing and the bonding that we need to experience in order to really enjoy what this life is truly about, right? What your work in this world is really, what you're doing in your work and your job and your role, how it impacts the environment and the world around you.
Yes. And I like the word movement, because this is the whole point of the EMC process, because EMC is so experiential. We are creating movement so people can actually experience what does it feel like to feel okay to be accepted when we
Mhm.
feel hurt or ashamed or embarrassed. What does it feel like to want to get reassurance and validation from someone when we feel rejected or abandoned? What does it feel like? So I think because EMC is here and now, what's happening with you here and now, it
Mhm.
actually provides you with that experience, experiencing vulnerability and then sharing that vulnerability. And on the other side, where people hear that vulnerability, what do they do with it? So the EMC process, and especially in stage 2, where we teach people how to be accessible, responsive, and engaged, it's all about accepting, validating, and reassuring so people can repair that bond and repair that message, because that's what we're actually doing when withdrawers and pursuers go into the habitual way of responding to the triggers. They send the wrong message. So in stage 2, we're correcting that message, and that is the beauty of the EMC process. It helps us to gain that experience and the healing in the same training session.
And then we will have world peace.
Well, I love this process because it is so powerful for people to actually experience. What does it feel like? It's all about that role modeling and being normalized, right? Emotional
Yeah.
connection is the most powerful way for us to regain that motivation. Like you said, how do we unleash motivation? How do we reignite
Movement
movement?
in our
And
life.
that, yeah, and that is all about emotional connection.
Wonderful. Well, that is a perfect way to end this podcast. Would you like to add anything else, Dr. Lola?
Yes, we have a webinar coming up next week. Please email us at emcleaders.com. If you get our emails, you will have a link to register. We hope to see you there. We are very excited to share our resources. Please join us and subscribe to our channel, EMC Leaders, and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Yes.
Yes.
And on LinkedIn. Yes, we have great resources.
Yes. Well, as a reminder, we're so grateful for you. We thank you for your time and energy and your commitment and dedication to having a better workplace environment and creating a better world because of your desire to be emotionally connected. Remember, this is the Leader in You podcast brought to you by EMC Leaders. My name is Polina, and I'm co hosting this podcast with Dr. Lola Gershfeld. We love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.